Welcome back everybody to the PowerShell course. Name is Alex Louis. What I'm going to show you today is in continuing with our PowerShell lessons, and the topics that we covered before were the if statements. I'm going to continue with a switch. That is buried inside the objects and data structures topic. In order for me to teach you more about data structures specifically, I have to go into the switch and the if, and then we'll segue into loops so that you understand how they work, and then we'll go into a little bit of data structures and how they work as well, because data structures you're going to use to store data and iterate through the data structure itself. So let's get started. Let's take a look at the logic of how the switch statement works. As you see here, I've declared a variable called myVariable. I've assigned it to the value 3. So the data type now is going to be a numeric data type. And how the switch statement syntax is you're going to have a compound statement, and then whatever is on each line is a case. What that means, it's going to compare for equality based on my variable and compare the case of the value 1. It's going to compare the case of the value 1. If my variable is equal to 1, it's going to show this specific line. If it's not, it's going to go to the next case, compare, and if it is, then it'll go. Now, the logic with this is that once it finds the case, it will not look for the rest, even if you don't have a break. So here's, let me give you an example. So first I'll do the real simple example where I run this PowerShell script. You saw that because my variable matches the number 3, it's going to print out it is 3. Now let us change this to 2 and run that, and then you see it is 2. Now even though I did not have a break, it was still able to break out of this switch case statement, which is a little weird, because if you're talking about other languages such as C++ or C#, you will have to use a break unless or else it's going to slide down. In the case of PowerShell, it's not like that. It will just break out once it finds that equality. The other thing I wanted you to also look at is we don't necessarily have to put a variable for this switch. They have to be the same type, but I can use a literal as well. So let's do literal 1, and if I run this script, you're going to see that it's going to compare 1 to 1, and it'll write this out to the command shell prompt. I could put a variable, or I could put a literal, a hard-coded literal, and that's okay. The other example I wanted you to look at is when you have two similar cases to compare against. In this specific case, I have turned back my variable to the value 3, and now I have two case statements with the same value. Now we know that once we run this, as you see below, it's going to compare my variable to 1, it's going to say no, 2, no, 3, yes. Now what happens with the switch case is that even though it's not going to really slide down with the next case, it's still going to do the comparison. So the logic continues. It doesn't slide down like other languages where it'll just go through and print everything after that specific case. It's going to actually compare the values afterwards. And what this does is it's going to say, okay, 3 is good. I'm not going to stop here. I'm going to keep comparing, but I'm only going to print if the statement is equal. So if I do 4, it's going to say no, not going to print this out. And then if I do 3, it's going to say yes, so it's going to print that out. So if you look below, it did print out it is 3 and then 3 again. Now if you want to stop this behavior, meaning that you want to stop at the first equality where it says it's true, it's simple. All you would have to do is put in a break, which is a reserved keyword. Take this out. Now, if I do that, what the logic, the way the PowerShell logic follows is that it's going to take my variable, compare it to 1, no, compare it to 2, no, compare it to 3, yes, not going to proceed with the comparisons because I have a break. And this break allows me to completely leave my switch case. Here is something new that perhaps you've never seen before if you come from another programming language such as C# or C++, is that you can have a collection in your switch statement, which means that, for example, I can have a 4 and a comma 2. What does that mean? Basically, this means you're trying to switch case on a list of numbers. So the logic dictates that if I have this collection of 2 digits or 2 numbers, the first switch, it's going to say, okay, switch with 4 and make the comparisons to 4. It's going to go down and say 4 is equal to 1, no, 2, no, 3, no, and then 4, yes. That's your first, we can call this, and we're going to get into this when we start looking at loops and arrays, but that's your first iteration on your switch. The next one, once it prints this one out, is now I can do a comparison here with the value 2. And once it gets to this specific element in this switch collection, it's going to compare 1, no, 2, yes, and that's why you see it is 2 on the bottom. So if I run this again, you'll see that it found 4 first and then 2. You can cut this behavior by putting in break statements, meaning that you can stop the switch from iterating to the next element or going to the next element. And I can do that if I add breaks right after each statement. And the last one I won't, because obviously it's the last one. So what we can do here, what's going to happen here is it's going to start here, switch on 4. This is going to say no, okay, no, no, and then yes. This yes allows us to print out it is 4. But we also have a break statement here. Keep doing that, I don't know why. I also have a break statement here. What that means is it's actually going to break and apply it to the collection, and the whole switch statement will be terminated. Meaning that I'm not even going to get to compare the value to. So you have to be careful when you're using a break with collections in your switch. Let's take a look at that behavior here. So you see here, it found the 4. Because it saw the break, it actually completely leaves the switch case. So far I've used literal values and then variable on the switch. The next video I'm going to cover a little more complex commands that can happen within the switch. Why don't you stay tuned and watch the next video.